So welcome to our final master class. Today we have Professor Valerie Coleman Page. She's an assistant professor at the Frost School in performance, chamber music, and entrepreneurship. She is a Grammy-nominated flutist, composer, and entrepreneur, and is an alumna of Chamber Music Society, Concert Artists Guild, and creator of the ensemble Amani Winds. And I also know she went to Tanglewood as a high schooler, and I've been meaning to tell her I did too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so anyway,
Yes.
welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm just, let's see, this meeting is being recorded. Continue. Done. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to talk with you guys and to share my path in hopes that it gives you some ideas of where your path could be in many unexpected ways. My career has been built on creating opportunities that have brought people together, a lot of risks and a lot of failing, a host of guardian angels along the way who have been mentors and just people who do acts of kindness, a lot of phone calls, and even a simple song called Emoja. But I am originally from Louisville, Kentucky. And I grew up in the same neighborhood as Muhammad Ali in the West End of Louisville. And the West End of Louisville is considered, right now, it's considered a war zone of sorts. But at the time that I grew up, all I knew was the bubble that my mom had provided for me that did not give me any kind of feelings of being in danger. It was just this bubble of safety where I was able to explore just my backyard and just playtime and learning how to do music. So actually music was a part of my playtime. I used to basically walk outside as a toddler and pick up little tree branches and pretend that they were flutes. And after that, as I got a little bit older, I decided that I wanted to write music. And I don't know why I decided to write music at the time. I knew it was a moment that I had to just express creativity. And so my mom had this Casio keyboard in the house. And we kept getting cassette players for holidays, for Christmas. And so part of the playtime was just plunking out notes on the keyboard. And any kid loves to play music, at a young age on keyboards, just the feel of the touch of, hands on the keys. But after a while, I was like, okay, I'm making songs here, and I like to try to figure out how to write this down or how to document it. So I took one of the keyboards and the cassette players, press record, and just try to hammer out a melody. And then with that playback, I would then try to do a layer on top of that. And so between two cassette players back and forth, I would loop different sounds and different melodies. And at the time, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But with cassette players, the sound warps each time you play it back. So it sounded like a horror show. But I thought it was the best thing in the world. And from there, after just creating these little works, I was like, okay, I gotta try to figure out how to write this down. I don't know how to read music, and I have no idea of notation. So I started to create little notations like triangles and circles and stars and spirals and things like that. But it wasn't until I actually got to fourth grade when the band director came to the room of the school. I'm public school raised, by the way, that she basically said to us, what instruments would you like to play? And gave us that permission slip. And of course, I took it home to mom and, came back, I wanted to play flute. So there it was. And I remember getting that flute in my hands for the first time, and it all came together. this need previously of trying to create music or to dive into this world of music all of a sudden started to manifest through this instrument. The potential was there. So, I dug into learning how to play the flute. It was an eye opener, learning scales and learning all the rudimentary things that needed to be learned. But along the way, I was still creating music based on whatever I would play on the instrument itself. So I just remember then going into high school, joining the youth orchestra. And it was there that, and also the band. I've had great band directors along the way that have been those guardian angels. But with the youth orchestra, I started to be exposed to a world of orchestral music. And that was a big change because it allowed my ears to open up in a way I never thought before. And I started to listen to Dvorak and Beethoven and Copeland, all the things that at the time were really resonating. And so then from there, I spent my summers sitting in the backyard with staff paper that I created. I just took, regular paper and just drew lines and created my own staff paper of like 30 staves to write orchestral pieces, because I knew the sound of the orchestra was something that I wanted to create. I fell in love with it. And so it was my summer project. My freshman, sophomore, and junior years, I spent my summers writing symphonies. And it sounds kind of weird, but I have to admit they weren't very good because they were filled with the notions of things that I had heard on the radio, the ideas, the thematic ideas. But it allowed me to build up an inner ear, which basically means that you develop, you hear something and you learn how to notate it just based on listening and learning how to manifest it. So it was a wonderful time that allowed me to really feed into developing my skill on the flute as well. I remember one Saturday during youth orchestra, a man came to the youth orchestra to do auditions. And I walked in and I really didn't have a clue of what the auditions were for. I didn't know what Tanglewood was. And I came into the room, I played my piece. At the time, it was the Ibert Concerto First Movement and Chaminade Concertino, a really strange pair, but there you go. And near the end of it, he says, "Okay, do you play piccolo too?" And I said, "Yes, I do. And what would you like to play?" And I said, "I'll do Stars and Stripes." He said, "All right, when you're ready, go." And I looked at him and I was kind of confused because I didn't know what key he wanted it in. So I asked him, "What key do you want it in?" And he just gave me this strange look. But weeks later, I got this email from Tanglewood saying, you got this scholarship given to you by Dorio Anthony Dwyer, who's the principal flutist of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, to attend the Boston University Tanglewood Institute. And so my world was limited to Louisville at the time, Louisville. And all of a sudden, I was thrust into this world now beyond the state of Kentucky, going to this summer festival where there were so many musicians, there were so many people of my age that were playing circles around me that had all of this experience and all of this amazing exposure. And it was a very intimidating thing at the time. But at the same time, the idea that you could go and sit under the stars and watch the Boston Symphony Orchestra play Dvorak New World Symphony, I knew that that was a moment that, this is it. This is where I'm meant to be. So after that, I decided to go to Boston University. And BU is, at the time, was a wonderful place, but I wanted to do both flute and composition. And so it took me 5 years to do it, but I got my degree in both. But along the way, there were a lot of roadblocks because, you know, I was one of the few people of color there. So there was really very little representation or very little role models that I could rely on that, that I could gravitate to. Um, and I do remember that there were times that within the composition department that I didn't feel like I belonged. And that was because there was a culture there that was not at the time very inclusive of people of color. You know, the composition field is starting to really open up in a beautiful way right now. But back then, it was a very traditional field. And so I was the only one. I was one of two women and the only Black person at the time. And I just remember just feeling like, okay, maybe I'm not a composer. Maybe this particular skill is not meant for somebody like me. But however, I pushed through and got my degrees. But it was after I got my degrees, I needed to take a year off to find myself. And it was during that time I was writing all along, but I stopped calling myself a composer. And I remember then taking a lesson with a lady by the name of Judy Mendenhall. And she's a flute player in New York, and she teaches at Mannes School of Music. And I took a lesson with her and it went well, and I decided, okay, maybe I should just go ahead and audition for Mannes College of Music. And she, I took the audition, I made the wait list. I took that risk, but made the wait list. And I remember at the time calling her up and saying, if you decide to bring me into your studio, I'm going to be one of the hardest workers in the studio. I will earn my spot. And somehow or another, she said, okay. And from there, little things happen along the way. And this whole idea of creating opportunities that bring people together really became a big part of my career from that moment on. I remember sitting in this little room in New York City. I had just gotten to New York and I'm thinking, oh, I'm in the city. I don't know, how to just be or how to survive. And the idea of this group, Imani Winds, came into my head. And the name came before the group, but Imani Winds is a wind quintet that tours the country. But at the time, I was just thinking about how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to make a living as a musician? And when the name popped into my head, I decided to just ask around and call up people and just see who is available to sit down and read music with me. And so from there, Imani Winds was born. I'd like to play a clip for you guys of the group. And, I mentioned that there's a simple song called Umoja that has been a connecting point for my career. So I'll just play a little bit of this song. And Umoja came about actually as a women's choir piece. When I was at Mannes College of Music, I decided to create a Pan-African culture organization. Here we go, creating opportunities that bring people together. And we had this holiday concert. And so I was thinking, oh, we don't have any music for this. And so Umoja came from that. I decided to create a simple song called Umoja. And later on, it became something that Imani Winds could use. So I'm going to play a little bit of that for you. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. That piece has been a part of my career um, as, I would say, as transitional moments, transformational moments, every single step of the way. And the lyrics to it, I mean, you heard the wind quintet version of it, but the lyrics, it's a woman's song first. And it goes like this. Listen, my people, children of all, it's time for unity, hear the winds call. Oh, Nkosia. Oh, Nkosia. And at the time of creating this piece, knowing that it was all about Kwanzaa, I wanted to have like certain percussion type of sounds within the music itself. So the hook, which is, you know, that thing that you repeat over and over again, had that kind of nonsense words. I created nonsense words around it. And so that part is Umalalaki swayoko manchoa, Umalalaki swayoko manchoa, and then coming back into oh Nkosia, oh Nkosia. And so I just remember the first time hearing a women's choir singing that. It was just outpouring of just this sound, this and if you could hear all the harmonies that go with it, much like choral singing, or if you're in, you know, in church, you know, laying down some gospel groove. And so when my group came together, one of the very first gigs we did was a wedding. And it was a very unusual wedding because in New York City, there's always some kind of unusual circumstance where you might see a celebrity walking down the street, or, you know, that kind of thing. So this wedding was for a celebrity, and that celebrity had a very specific request. He wanted the color scheme to be all white and everybody dressed up in kente cloths and white. and he wanted music based on that. So this group, who's brand new, that had flute, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, and French horn, the standard woodwind quintet configuration, we didn't have any kind of music like that at all. So this song, this woman's song, I knew that it would fit for woodwind quintet, or at least I want to give that a try. So our very first performance of this piece in its woodwind quintet fashion, was Umoja. And by the way, the Imani Winds as a woodwind quintet, I mentioned the configuration, but what I didn't mention was these musicians came from all the different colleges, music conservatories in New York City at the time. So the horn player was a hornist on Broadway doing The Lion King. He was a freelancer at the time, but the rest of us were students. I was at Manus. Monica Ellis, the bassoon player, she was at Juilliard. And Miriam Adam, the clarinetist, and Toyin Spellman Diaz, she's the oboist, they were at Manhattan School of Music. And so before the group even got together, I had given them a call on the phone because I just, really felt that this name Imani Winds needed to manifest itself into an ensemble. And it was a cold phone call. They didn't know me. And I said to them, would you like to start a group? And I would love to see, because you guys are people of color, I'd love to see if this group could, through our shared cultural heritage, lend itself to different interpretations within the standard woodwind pieces. And at the time they said, sure, we'll be interested to sit down and read. And I just remember that very first rehearsal. It was in a practice room at Manhattan School of Music. And we all came in, and I was just so very excited to see them, because it was the possibility of bringing people together. That opportunity was just such a thrill. And so we sat down and we played through this piece called Summer Music by Samuel Barber. And I just remember sitting there being blown away by the musicianship. And I knew at the time they were all pretty much looking at their watches like, okay, well, we're here just reading. We're just taking this time to read something together. And when is this going to be over? But I was thinking, this is so amazing. This is so great, because I had that vision. But so over time, each person within the group started to take on the vision, started to have a buy-in, have ownership with this. And, we started to do little things like competitions, and we tried to create our own concert series, which I think really speaks to today's do-it-yourself career building attitude. But I just remember our very first concert was a total of 2 people in the audience. We had rented out a church, and I remember standing on the corner with flyers advertising our concert. And 2 people showed up, but that didn't stop us. We decided to just keep it going. And the second concert, 10 people showed up. And then the third concert, 30 people showed up. And by the end of a set amount of months, we had an audience that, people, friends and family, and others who wanted to hear this group who was trying to create new sounds. But at the same time, we started to build music, our knowledge of music, which meant that we had not only built up standards, but we also created things. And by the way, the whole time I was writing for the group, I still did not consider what I did, this particular feeling of a need to build repertoire for an ensemble. I never considered myself as a composer within that. It wasn't until later on, when I got my first review, that the reviewer called me a composer. And I said, oh, maybe there is a place for somebody like me within the world of music composition. But along the way, we started, once again, we started doing competitions. One of the competitions was Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. There was an apprenticeship program called CMS2. And basically what that was is that you go in and you play for this panel, and they either pick you or they don't. And if they pick you, that means that you get to be on the roster alongside the musicians of Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. So we went in, and I was so nervous at the time, but one of the things that we played on our audition was an original composition of mine called the Afro-Cuban Concerto. And at the time, once again, I wanted to create music that not only brought people together, but also had elements of things that you hadn't heard before embedded into Western classical music. So, the idea of Afro-Cuban drumming and Afro-Cuban style melodies based on traditions and cultures put into a woodwind quintet form lended itself to be a different type of sound, almost like a drum circle. So we played that. We played that for this panel of esteemed people who made us so nervous at the time. But I remember we got the call back, and we got actually invited to join the program. But something happened within that moment. Two guardian angels started to come to the fore. One of them is David Schifrin. I don't know if you guys know David Schifrin, but he is a clarinetist at Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. He is somebody that decided to say, I really believe in this group, and I really believe in this flutist who's also a composer, and I'm going to invite them to my summer festivals. And then the other person was Bruce Adolph, who is a composer. Upon hearing the group play, he said to me, he came up to me after the audition, he said, I'd like to speak to you. And so we sat down, and he basically started to talk to me about, okay, I'd like to help you out. I'd like to give you some advice on publishing. I'd like to give you some advice on writing music. I want to mentor you. And so these two people were just so pivotal. And Bruce Adolph and David Schifrin, they were instrumental in allowing my group to then go out and participate in summer festivals. One in particular is Chamber Music Northwest in Portland, Oregon. And it had opportunities for young ensembles to play. And because of that, we were able to now start to learn how to teach groups and whatnot. So that's basically my career. There were other competitions along the way, such as Concert Artists Guild, which allowed us to get management. And Concert Artists Guild was one of those great competitions that also allow you to get a Carnegie Hall debut as well. So from there, we were touring and whatnot, but it wasn't until we started to really tour Umoja, the piece, that things really start to take off for us. So I'm grateful that this little simple song started to be that pivotal factor. So that is my spiel. I want to be a resource to all of you guys as you're coming up through your musical training. And if I could give any advice, I would say number one, always approach the art of creating with a sense of gratefulness. And to me, gratefulness is, really looking at all the beautiful things within the moment that you're in. Whether it is that you're playing in an orchestra and, you're enjoying the sounds around you, whether it's you're playing in a chamber music group and you're really enjoying the community and camaraderie, or even the simple joy of just picking up your instrument and really just loving the sound of it. And I would also say, always generate your spark and your own permission to define yourself as a musician. Not rely on seeking permission and validation from your instructor to be musical, to be artists. You know, this is the time where you can really start to look at yourselves and say to yourself that you are an authority within your own art. You know, each of you has a special voice and a special sense of musicality. And I would say take that risk of exploring that and really putting it out there, because that means that you're being true to yourself in that moment. And then I would say turn moments of challenges, difficult moments, into triumphs for the future. And there have been many auditions that I've taken and many auditions that I have just absolutely bombed at, but I learned from that experience and turned them into triumphs. I remember one moment of challenge was being on the road, and there was, we had a concert, and I had packed 2 different shoes. It wasn't even a pair. I don't know how I managed to do that. I had one heel that was a black high-heeled shoe and the other one that was a brown high-heeled shoe. And it was a completely different style. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get on stage with that? And on top of it, there was the green room and the stage. There were 2 separate buildings with snow in between. And so, so as we're walking on stage, me with my one shoe in brown and one shoe black, walking through the snow, one of the heels snapped. And I got on, and before we walked on stage, I said, you know what, to heck with this. So I kicked off both shoes. And I played the entire concert barefoot. And I don't know if it was, you know, just having that contact with the stage floor that gave me a sense of grounding for that performance. But from that point on, I started to really love playing barefoot. So it was a moment of triumph because I recognized another aspect of performance that I had not thought about before. But at the same time, you know, something that could very well become something that I'm known for as well in performing. And then I would say square, bold vision with deep empathy. You'll go through stages of stress and doubt, and, you know, of your own musicality, but, and even relying on your private instructors for direction. But it's in those moments that you get a glimpse of what you can be. You know, I find that in the most challenging moments, you do find those moments of potential mastery where you begin to take the risk of redefining techniques that you've learned, and even out of just pushing through making musical directions with strategic purpose. So, and one of those moments for me was actually a commission that I got from the Philadelphia Orchestra. They wanted Umoja, this simple song, Here It Comes Back. You know, they wanted this piece to be one of my first orchestral pieces. And I was terrified. I didn't know how to write really for orchestra. And they took a chance. They took a chance in me, and I pulled it together somehow. And they read through it. And I just remember that very first moment that this group, this ensemble that was amazing, playing the violins, playing with this beautiful sound, I got weak in the knees. And it was all because they were playing this piece that meant so much to me throughout my career. And somehow or another, this piece once again proved pivotal, because from then came a second commission from the orchestra, and other commissions from other orchestras. And so that's where I am right now, all because of mentors acts of kindness, and umoja for that matter. So I just want to thank you guys so much for listening to my story. And I hope that you're able to get some information that perhaps can be applied to your own careers, that can be used within your trainings. And, you know, if you have any questions, please let me know.
There's a couple comments in the chat from when you were playing the video.
See. Oh, who played Umoja last year? Oh, hey. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so glad you guys played it. Yeah, Umoja's had many different incarnations, meaning that each and every single version, there's been a women's choir version, a wind quintet version, a flute quartet, and what am I thinking? And now an orchestral version. And each one, even though the melody is the same, it has different styles around it and different music around it. So they're all unique and different. But they're kind of like siblings to one another with that connecting thread of that melody, that that one. But it all stands for unity. I see somebody says this makes me want to play Umoja. Well, you know, Umoja to me was just one of those pieces that I wrote because I wanted to bring people together. And I find that in artistry, as you're defining your artistry, that working through the intent of bringing people together will always yield amazing results. And I think that piece is a product of that. And the energy that went into that piece always manifests itself every time the melody is played, I think. Oh, I see. Okay. What are the biggest leaps of faith you have taken? Ooh. I think one of the biggest leaps of faith that I've taken is going to Boston University Tanglewood Institute, going to Tanglewood. You know, like I said, I didn't know anything outside of the state of Kentucky. And maybe I didn't recognize it fully as the leap of faith at the time. But I just remember getting on the plane, making that decision to go and getting on the plane and feeling so nervous. But when I got there onto the campgrounds, it wasn't even 5 minutes of stepping foot there that I met my first friend. And, you know, then another friend and so on and so on. So, you know, I think taking those risks of going and doing things that you've never done before or learning new pieces, you're always going to find guardian angels along the way, people that, you know, help you to step your foot through the door and take the next step and take the next step. And I think in a way I've kind of gotten faith from that. Another risk that I took was coming down here to Miami to teach at Frost School of Music, because I had just left my group Imani Winds at the time. And that was a risk in itself, because with this group, I've been traveling for the better part of 2 decades. We've been touring nonstop. And there came a point where I said, you know, maybe I need to focus in on some other artistic ideas. And so I took the leap of faith with that. But it wasn't even 2 months after, or 2 weeks after I decided to leave the group, that I got the phone call from the Frost School of Music to apply for a position here. And so when I got the offer to take up a job here, that was a leap of faith, of leaving behind New York City, a place that I was living in for the better part of 2 decades, for most of my adult life, moving with my family to a different city. That took a lot of risk. But one thing I've learned is that when you take risks, things happen. Things happen. It's almost as if you signal out to the world, to the universe, that you're ready for new and more elevated responsibilities, or rather new opportunities. They come in windfall fashion when you take risks. And that's why I'm always an advocate for that. And then somebody says, when I was in college at Susquehanna, I remember, oh my gosh, Imani Woods came and performed a recital and did several master classes with the music students. It was such great. Thank you so much. I'm wondering, Susquehanna University, I'm wondering if that was the hall. Could it have been the hall that had the snow in between the green room?
Oh, that wouldn't have been us. That wouldn't have been us.
Okay.
Was attached.
Okay.
But there was probably snow.
Oh yes, Susquehanna. Oh wow. Thank you guys. Do you guys have any other questions? Let's see. I've heard that song before. Oh, thanks. It's been on the radio a little bit because of Imani Wins, and that's the benefit of having a chamber music group, because you can really build your own career. And you know, I find that as you're building a career with a chamber ensemble, opportunities open up that may not fully open up to you as a soloist, or it allows you to take advantage or create opportunities that can really yield some beautiful results while you're waiting for that orchestra job or any other job. And I'd say actually don't wait for a job, make opportunities for yourself and make opportunities to grow as musicians. Who is your biggest supporter throughout your entire career? I would say my mom. I would say my mom, because she was the one that put me through school. And she was the one that put musical instruments in front of me as a child during playtime. And so, yeah. Oh, yeah, my parents never thought music was for me, but here I am. Yeah, I totally dig it. There's going to be people in your life where, you know, they're going to tell you that you can't do something, or rather not believe that particular direction might be for you. And all I can say is what's in your heart is what matters, and believing who that is and as a part of your identity. And so my mom, she allowed me to just play and explore with these musical instruments, and that meant so much. Oh, I would also say the guardian angels along the way. One of them was a lady by the name of Trix Count. And she's a flutist who was a fixture in the community when I went to school at Boston University. And she knew Julius Baker, who was the retired principal of the New York Philharmonic. And so she said to me, I really want you to meet Julius Baker, and I want you to take lessons with him. And this woman, this amazing woman, she said, let's go. She put me in a car. We drove up to Brewster, New York, which at the time was 3 hours away from Boston. Every Saturday that I would take lessons with Julius Baker, it was because of her, a guardian angel, that allowed that exposure to happen. And Julius Baker taught at Juilliard at the time.
I like the comment a student made. I like how you guys look at each other with joy and pride, and you guys look like you're having a lot of fun. She wrote that during the video.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love chamber music. It's you know, the ability to just really express yourself, you know, not only in a social format, but to really have the freedom and have the security of expressing musical ideas, you know, with friends. What's better than, you know, playing music with friends? I don't know. I'm curious, do any of you guys play in chamber music? Or have you played in chamber music before? Maybe you play duets and trios. Awesome. I'm curious also of what the instrumentation is here, or who plays what instrument. How many of you guys play flute? How many of you play violin? Oh. And how many of you play cello? Guitar? What about the woodwinds, clarinets, bassoons, French horns? Okay. Percussion? Piano? Oh, team percussion. I see a lot of pianists. Awesome. There's like a wide spectrum. Are there any instruments I missed here? Euphonium. Who plays euphonium? Put a thumbs up if you play euphonium. And trumpet. Oh, awesome. Well, I hope that, you know, you guys get the opportunity to play chamber music or find new ways to play chamber music within the pandemics that's happening right now. One of the things that we like to do, me and my friends, you know, within Imani Winds and elsewhere, we are just, we have microphones set up in our homes, and we're recording and just sending those recordings off to one another and putting them together, making these chamber music sounds based on our individual recordings. And so you can even do that at home. If you have, using your phone, just using your phone, recording yourself, playing one line, and then playing it back, you can do duets with yourself. So, you know, chamber music is a great way of just creating community for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I love chamber music too. And yeah, playing in groups is amazing. Do you have any questions for me, and you know, how I can be a resource to you guys? I think that we can all agree that chamber music is amazing. Are you happy with the career that you've chosen? Yeah, but I just feel like there's a ways to go, you know? The one of the things that I always think about is just ideas for the next piece to write, and the next piece to learn how to play. You know, we're always continuously learning, and no one has fully arrived yet at where they want to be. And so I guess I don't look at the arrival, but I look at getting there, the process of getting there, and all the people that I meet, and in that, and all the music that is out there to play. And in that, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the career that I've chosen. And by the way, I teach chamber music here. I'm the director of chamber music at Frost School, but my other day job is as a touring artist. And that, of course, has been put on hold due to the pandemic, but we find different ways, once again, to communicate and to make music with one another through the airwaves. Thank you for that question. It's fabulous.
Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Professor Coleman, for being with us.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, guys. I'm really, really pleased to meet all of you. And thank you for your comments and questions too. And thanks, yeah, thank you for your time as well. And I hope that we can all meet and do chamber music at some point. That would be amazing. Thank you.